They gave the VP role I created to the CEO's son-in-law. Chapter 1. The announcement. The email arrived at 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: Exciting leadership updates at Hargrove and Associates. I remember thinking, as I opened it with my morning coffee, that it was finally happening. 9 years. $340 million in assets under management. A division I had built from a single desk and a list of cold leads. It is with great pride that we announced the promotion of Marcus Reeve to Vice President of Wealth Management. I stopped reading. Marcus Reeve. Marcus Reeve, who had joined the firm 26 months ago. Marcus Reeve, who had never closed a single account independently. Marcus Reeve, who happened to be married to CEO Richard Hargrove's daughter. I set down my coffee. Read it again. And again. Marcus brings fresh energy and vision to a division that has shown remarkable growth. Remarkable growth. The growth I created. The clients I found. The relationships I spent 9 years building, one dinner, one golf game, one midnight crisis call at a time. Fresh energy. I closed my laptop. Picked up my phone. And started making a list. Chapter 2. 9 years, one morning. Let me tell you what 9 years at Hargrove and Associates actually looked like. I joined as a junior analyst in 2015. No clients. No network. Just a Series 65 license, a finance degree from University of Michigan, and more ambition than the entire floor combined. My first year, I made 4,200 cold calls. Not leads, cold calls. People who had never heard of Hargrove. People who hung up on me. People who told me to lose their number. By year 2, I had converted 14 of them into clients. Small accounts. $50,000 here. $120,000 there. But mine. Every single one built on trust one had personally earned. Sarah, you're the only financial advisor I've ever trusted, my first $1 million client told me in 2018. When you move, I move. I remembered that line on the morning of the announcement. I had grown the wealth management division from $4 million in AUM to $340 million. Hired and trained a team of 6 analysts. Created the proprietary client assessment framework that the firm now uses company-wide. And Richard Hargrove gave it to his son-in-law. Not because Marcus was better. Not because he had a vision. But because he was family. I had 9 years of receipts that said otherwise. Chapter 3, The Boy with the Borrowed Title. Marcus Reeve was not a bad person. That's the hardest part of this story to tell honestly. He was charming. Well-dressed. He remembered birthdays and brought expensive wine to team lunches. He was exactly the kind of person who thrives in environments where optics matter more than output. But he didn't understand wealth management. Not really. Sarah, can you help me prep for the Johnson account review? He asked me 3 days after his promotion was announced. I want to make a good impression. The Johnsons have been my clients for 6 years, I said. Right. I just mean, you know, the relationship. Maybe you can walk me through their portfolio strategy? I looked at him for a long moment. Sure, I said. I'll send you their file. I sent him the file. The surface-level file. The one that showed numbers without context. Without the 7 years of handwritten notes I kept in my personal journal. Without the knowledge that David Johnson had a complicated relationship with his eldest son who was also a beneficiary. Without understanding that Patricia Johnson called me every October because that was when her late mother's estate distributions came in and she needed someone to talk to, not just a portfolio review. You can hand someone a map. You cannot hand them the territory. Chapter 4, What $340 million looks like. Here's what $340 million in assets under management actually represents at a boutique investment firm like Hargrove. It's 47 individual client relationships. It's 23 family accounts spanning multiple generations. It's 6 business accounts from local entrepreneurs who trusted me with their company pension funds. It's David and Patricia Johnson, $18 million, referred by a colleague in 2017. It's the Chin family, $31 million, second-generation wealth that I helped restructure after their patriarch passed. It's Raymond Okafor, $12 million, a retired surgeon who called me his financial daughter. None of those relationships belong to Hargrove and Associates. They belong to me. The clients didn't work with the firm. They worked with Sarah. They trusted Sarah. They had Sarah's personal number saved in their phones under a contact they'd labeled things like Sarah, financial genius, or Sarah, call first. I know because Raymond told me once, laughing, that his wife had asked who Sarah was because he called me more than his actual children. Richard Hargrove thought he was handing his son-in-law a division. He was actually handing him an empty building. The soul of it walked out the door every evening with me. He just didn't know that yet. Chapter 5. The quiet goodbye. I didn't make a scene. Didn't send an angry email. Didn't confront Richard in his glass corner office. I submitted my resignation on a Thursday afternoon via a single polite paragraph. 2 weeks' notice, as required by my contract. Richard called me within 4 minutes. Sarah, let's talk about this. Whatever you need, more compensation, a different title. Richard, I interrupted quietly, you gave my division to your son-in-law. There's nothing to talk about. Silence. He needs mentorship. You'd still be involved. I'll see you through my notice period. I wish Marcus well. I hung up. That evening, I began making calls. Not to poach clients. Not to scheme. Just personal calls. The kind I made all the time. Checking in. Asking about grandchildren and vacation homes and health updates. And at the end of each call, I mentioned, conversationally, almost as an afterthought, that I'd be leaving Hargrove at the end of the month. The silence on the other end of those calls told me everything I needed to know. Chapter 6. The calls they never expected. You're leaving? David Johnson said. I could hear the alarm in his voice even through the phone. At the end of the month, yes. Where are you going? I'm exploring options. A pause. Then. Sarah. You know Patricia and I don't have a relationship with the firm. We have a relationship with you. I know, David. I appreciate that more than you know. So wherever you land, we'd like to know. Raymond Okafor was more direct. Tell me where you're going and I'll call them Monday morning to start the transfer paperwork. The Chin family asked if I'd consider starting my own practice. They said they'd be anchor clients. One by one, in quiet, personal conversations over 5 evenings, I spoke to every significant client I'd brought into Hargrove. Not one of them said they planned to stay. Chapter 7. One by one. The transfer requests started arriving at Hargrove on a Monday. By Wednesday morning, they had received 31 account transfer requests totaling $287 million in assets. By Friday, the number was $312 million. I know this because Marcus called me in a panic on Tuesday afternoon. Sarah, what did you do? I didn't do anything, Marcus. Clients have the right to choose their advisors. You told them to leave. I told them I was leaving. What they chose to do with that information was entirely up to them. I heard him breathing on the other end. Young. Overwhelmed. Out of his depth in ways he hadn't yet fully understood. What am I supposed to do? He said. And for a moment he sounded less like a VP and more like a 28-year-old who'd been handed something he wasn't ready for. Talk to your father-in-law, I said quietly. He's the one who made this decision. I ended the call. By the end of my notice period, the wealth management division had gone from $340 million to $28 million in AUM. Marcus's inherited empire had evaporated in 3 weeks. Chapter 8. The empty portfolio. Richard Hargrove called me on my last day. Not to wish me well. You violated your non-solicitation agreement, he said. His voice had lost its CEO warmth. Raw now. Exposed. I reviewed my contract carefully before I resigned, Richard. I never solicited a single client. I informed them of my departure. They made their own choices. You knew what would happen. I knew what might happen, I said. You knew what would happen too, when you gave my division away. You just assumed the relationships belonged to the firm instead of the person who built them. Silence. That was a $340 million book of business, Sarah. Yes, I said. It was. I let that land. I built it, I added. And you gave it to someone who didn't earn it. I think on some level, Richard, you always knew this was a possibility. You just didn't think I'd actually leave. Another silence. Longer this time. I picked up my cardboard box. Said goodbye to the colleagues I'd miss. And walked out of Hargrove and Associates for the last time. Chapter 9. The board's reckoning. What happened next, I learned through my remaining contacts inside the firm. The board called an emergency meeting the following week. $312 million in AUM had transferred out. 3 institutional accounts that had been considering Hargrove for their pension management quietly withdrew their interest. Marcus was called before the board. He had no answers. How could he? He hadn't built those relationships. He didn't know what made each client stay. He couldn't reverse what had already walked out the door. Richard Hargrove, I was told, aged visibly in that meeting. The board's conclusion was simple. The firm had allowed a critical single point of failure to develop in their most profitable division. One advisor held all the client relationships. And when she left, the division left with her. They weren't wrong. But they also weren't asking the right question. The right question wasn't why I had so much client loyalty. It was why they had given me no reason to share it. 9 years. No equity. No partnership track. A VP role handed to a 28-year-old because of who he married. What exactly did they think was going to happen? Chapter 10. The offer I didn't have to ask for. I had 3 interviews in my final week at Hargrove. By my last day, I had 2 offers. The first was from Meridian Wealth Partners, a regional firm that had been quietly building its talent base for a potential expansion. They offered me a senior VP title, $285,000 base plus performance bonuses, and, critically, a path to partnership within 3 years. The second was from Blackstone Capital Advisors. Larger firm. National footprint. Their offer was $310,000 base, full partnership consideration in 18 months, and something Hargrove had never once offered me in 9 years. Equity in the book of business I built. Raymond Okafor had already called Blackstone before my first interview. He told their managing director that he was transferring his accounts to wherever I landed and that he was also referring 2 colleagues. David and Patricia Johnson did the same. I walked into my first day at Blackstone Capital with $287 million in committed AUM and 3 referrals already in process. The managing director shook my hand and said, "We heard about what happened at Hargrove. We want you to know, here, advisors own their client relationships." I smiled. For the first time in weeks. "That's exactly why I'm here," I said. Chapter 11. The glass office. My office at Blackstone has floor-to-ceiling windows facing the river. I mention this not to boast but because for 9 years at Hargrove, I worked in an interior office with no windows. When I asked about the window office in my 3rd year, I was told it was reserved for partner-level staff. When I asked about the partner track, I was told the firm wasn't currently expanding its partnership structure. What I now know is that there was a quiet understanding at Hargrove that the partnership track was reserved for a particular kind of person. Connected. Male. Family adjacent to leadership. Not necessarily the person generating 68% of the firm's wealth management revenue. Not the person who had grown the division by 8,400% over 9 years. Just the right kind of person. Marcus Reeve has a glass office now. I've seen the photos on LinkedIn. He's smiling in all of them. His division currently manages $22 million in AUM. Down from $340 million when I left. My division at Blackstone crossed $400 million last quarter. I was offered partnership 6 months ahead of schedule. I accepted. Chapter 12. What loyalty really costs. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty. If I think about what happened to Hargrove. To Marcus. Even to Richard. Here's my honest answer. I think about what 9 years of loyalty costs when it's given to people who don't value it. I think about the 4,200 cold calls. The midnight client crises. The Thanksgiving when I spent 3 hours on the phone talking a client through a market panic instead of eating dinner with my family. I gave Hargrove everything. And when it came time to reward that investment, they looked past me to someone who shared their last name. That choice had consequences. Not because I sought revenge. But because relationships built on genuine trust cannot be inherited or transferred by org chart. The clients didn't leave because of me. They left because Hargrove showed them, through one very loud, very public decision, that the firm prioritized family over merit. And none of them had built $18 million portfolios by trusting people who prioritized the wrong things. So no. I don't feel guilty. I feel grateful. For every client who trusted me enough to follow. For a competitor who recognized what I'd built before I walked through their door. For the corner office with the window. And for the morning I opened that email and realized that the best thing that ever happened to my career was the worst thing Hargrove ever did to me. My name is Sarah. I turned $4 million into $340 million for people who didn't deserve it. Then I turned $287 million into $400 million for people who did. If you enjoyed this audit of corporate greed, there are many more ledgers yet to be opened. Subscribe to Corporate Karma Ledger to ensure you never miss a case of professional justice. Like this video if you believe that value is determined by what happens when you leave, not by the title on your door. Comment below, have you ever been passed over for a promotion by someone less qualified? Tell us your story. Your experience could be the basis for our next deep dive audit. Remember, in this market, assets are temporary, but karma is a permanent liability. Account settled. See you in the next quarter.